The clinking of forks and the low hum of the ceiling fan felt louder than the people sitting at the table. A strange silence hovered in the air, thick and uncomfortable, like the moment before a storm. I sat there quietly with my left arm secured in a sling, the plaster stiff, the skin beneath it throbbing with every movement. The bruises hidden under my sleeve pulsed in dull, angry shades. Yet I smiled, soft, calm, and unfitting for the mood everyone else carried. Across from me sat my daughter Anna, her posture rigid, her expression controlled. She had always been gentle as a child, soft-spoken, easily moved to tears, the type who apologized even when she wasn't wrong. But tonight I could see a coldness in her eyes, like she was wearing someone else's face, rehearsing someone else's lines. "It's her own fault," she said flatly, stabbing at her food without looking at me. "She doesn't listen. My husband just taught her a lesson." Her voice didn't crack. That was what hurt the most. Beside her, my son-in-law, Daniel, straightened proudly as if he had earned some medal. He didn't even try to hide the smirk pulling at the corner of his mouth. His hand rested on the back of her chair possessively, his knuckles lightly brushing her shoulder, a silent reminder of where her loyalty was expected to be. I watched him, and he held my gaze with the smug confidence of a man who believed he owned the room. A man who believed he owned the people inside it too. But my smile remained. "That's right," Daniel said, glancing briefly at me. "Sometimes discipline is necessary. Isn't that right, Mom?" Mom. The word came out coated with mockery. He liked calling me that. It gave him the illusion of power, as if he had been granted some authority in this household simply by marrying my daughter. I didn't answer. I didn't need to. Anna cleared her throat, her voice low, rehearsed. She pushed boundaries. She was disrespectful. She had to be reminded. I had been many things in my life, tired, stressed, overwhelmed, but never had I been called disrespectful by my own child. Not until Daniel came along. Not until he began to chip away at her confidence, her independence, her ability to think for herself. My daughter didn't meet my eyes. I noticed the way her hands trembled slightly, the way she kept touching her wedding band, twisting it nervously around her finger. The signs were faint, but I saw them. I always saw more than I let on. Even with my arm broken, even with the ache running up my shoulder and into my spine, I smiled. Not because I forgave, not because I accepted, but because I knew what was coming. I shifted a little in my seat, letting the slightest hint of amusement flicker across my face. Daniel noticed. His brows tightened almost imperceptibly, confusion replacing pride for a split second. He wasn't used to me being calm. He was used to me being intimidated, quiet, apologetic. He didn't understand that I had stopped being afraid the moment he laid his hands on me. The ticking of the kitchen clock filled the silence between us. Every second that passed felt deliberate, heavy with meaning. I saw Anna glance up, just once, uncertainty flickering across her features. She knew something was off. She could feel the air shift. I cut another piece of food with my right hand, every movement intentional. Let him think I was weak. Let him think he had already won. Because exactly 30 minutes from now, right on the dot, the doorbell would ring. And when it did, Daniel would learn. Not everything in this house was under his control. Not everything in this family belonged to him. And most importantly, he would learn who was truly in charge. The walls of my house had always held memories. Some warm, some painful, but all mine. Yet over the last 2 years, they had begun to echo with something else. Whispers of control, footsteps too heavy to belong to peace, and the quiet sobs my daughter didn't think I heard through the thin bedroom door. It hadn't always been like this. When Anna first introduced me to Daniel, he charmed the entire room. Polite, attentive, the kind of man who insisted on washing dishes after dinner just to help out. Perfect son-in-law, or so I thought. He said all the right things, did all the right things, until the wedding ring slid onto Anna's finger. That was when small things began to change, so small I almost missed them. The first time I noticed a shift was when he commented on her dress. "Too bright," he said casually, his smile never reaching his eyes. She laughed it off, promised to wear something different next time. Next came her friendships. "They're bad for your focus," he claimed. "They influence you." Our family group chat slowly lost her voice. Piece by piece he isolated her, as all predators do. I had reached out, tried to talk to her gently. "Sweetheart, are you happy?" She would smile, tight and unconvincing. "Of course, Mom. Daniel just wants what's best for me." I saw through the lies. But I didn't push, not yet. When their finances crumbled because Daniel lost his job and refused to accept beneath him work, guess who stepped in? Me. I paid their rent for months, bought groceries, covered medical bills, watched their toddler so they could rebuild stability. Daniel never looked grateful. He looked entitled. But the moment everything shifted, truly shifted, was 3 weeks ago. I found the first bruise. Faint one. Oval-shaped. Hidden under Anna's cardigan sleeve. She yanked the fabric down quickly, but not quickly enough. "Honey, who did that?" She froze, eyes darting like a trapped animal. "Mom, it's nothing." I bumped into the cabinet. I touched her hand and she flinched. My heart broke. Not because she was hurt, but because she believed she had to lie to protect him. That night after she left with Daniel, I sat on my bed staring at my phone, my hand trembling over a number I hadn't dialed in months, my eldest son, Mark. He had always been the protector of the family, the quiet kind, the kind of man who didn't raise his voice to solve problems, he ended them. When he answered, I didn't need to say much. He heard the crack in my voice. He heard the silence where my strength usually lived. "Mom," he said, voice steady, "tell me everything." And I did. I told him about the bruises, the isolation, the control. The night Daniel shoved me when I tried to defend Anna. And how 2 nights ago, when I begged my daughter to leave with her child, Daniel grabbed my arm, twisted it, and snapped bone like it was nothing. Mark didn't speak for a long time. But when he finally did, his voice was soft and terrifying. "Don't worry. I'll take care of it." Within hours, he sent me a list of documents he needed. Photos of the bruises, timestamps, screenshots of messages, recordings of arguments I had kept without knowing why. Evidence, he called it. I called it salvation. I had gathered everything silently, carefully, like a woman knitting her own safety net. The next morning, Mark told me everything was in place. So when I sat at that dinner table with Daniel gloating across from me and Anna repeating the poison he fed her, I wasn't smiling because I was weak. I was smiling because the storm I had quietly summoned was almost here. And Daniel, so sure of his power, had absolutely no idea what was about to hit him. By the time the clock in the dining room ticked to 7:29 p.m., the atmosphere had thickened to something almost suffocating. The air felt like it was waiting, holding its breath right along with me. The silverware clinking earlier had quieted. Now even the ceiling fan's faint rattling seemed hesitant, as if it too knew what was coming. Daniel leaned back in his chair after clearing his plate, stretching his arms with the arrogance of a king who believed he ruled the land beneath his feet. "You should be grateful," he said, gesturing toward my broken arm. "Discipline teaches boundaries, and you've never been good with boundaries." Anna flinched at his tone, though she tried to hide it behind a sip of water. Her hand still trembled. My heart ached for her, but I kept my expression neutral, almost peaceful. I continued cutting my food slowly with my trembling right hand. Every movement was deliberate, every breath controlled. He mistook my calm for fear. "Good. Let him. You really shouldn't provoke people," he went on, his voice dripping with superiority. "Especially when you live in someone else's house. Respect goes both ways." I almost laughed, not outwardly but inside, deep in the quiet place where my real power lived. My house, my mortgage, my savings. And yet he loved to pretend he ruled everything under this roof. Anna finally spoke, voice soft but anxious. "Maybe we shouldn't talk about this anymore, Daniel." He shot her a sharp look. "I'm speaking to my mother-in-law. Don't interrupt." Her shoulders curled inward like she was trying to make herself smaller. I wanted to reach across the table and pull her close, tell her that soon, very soon, she wouldn't have to fear him anymore. But timing was everything. The clock struck 7:30 p.m. Right on cue. Ding dong. The doorbell sliced through the thick silence like a blade. Daniel groaned dramatically and pushed back his chair. "Of course. Always when we're eating," he muttered, rolling his eyes. Probably some neighbor complaining about parking again. He had no clue. As he walked toward the front door, I saw Anna's eyes flick toward mine. There was a spark, tiny, trembling but alive. A question. A hope? A fear? I only gave her a soft smile, the kind meant to say, "It's going to be okay." Daniel swung the door open with the bored confidence of a man expecting to scold someone he thought beneath him. But the moment he saw who stood on the porch, the color drained from his face so fast it was like watching a candle blow out. My eldest son Mark stood there, broad-shouldered, calm, his posture relaxed but commanding. He didn't need anger to be intimidating. His mere presence was enough. On either side of him stood two uniformed officers, lights from their patrol car flashing softly behind them. "Evening," Mark said calmly. Daniel's mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. He tried to form a smile, but it came out twisted and wrong. Mark. We weren't expecting you." "No," my son replied. "You weren't." The officer stepped forward. "We need to speak with you, sir." Daniel laughed. It was high-pitched, nervous, ugly. "Speak to me? About what? There must be some misunderstanding." "Oh," Mark said, his voice almost gentle. "There's no misunderstanding." His eyes looked past Daniel into the dining room, locking onto mine. That connection, silent, strong, was everything I needed to stay steady. Daniel swallowed, throat bobbing. "What is this about?" One of the officers opened a folder. "There are allegations of physical violence, documented injuries, and multiple reports filed. We need you to come with us for questioning." "Who filed?" "I did," Mark said simply. The confidence drained from Daniel's face. The illusion cracked. The king's crown fell. In that instant, he understood something he had refused to believe. He was not in control. And the real storm had only just stepped through the door. The dining room was silent, save for the soft shuffling of shoes against the hardwood floor, and the distant hum of the patrol car's lights flashing through the window. Daniel's once bold posture had crumbled into something smaller, tighter, as if the very air around him now carried invisible chains. He couldn't see them, of course, but he could feel them, tense, unavoidable, real. My daughter Anna sat frozen at the table, hands folded in her lap, eyes wide. She had watched this man, her husband, the father of her child, assert dominance over everyone in the house for months. Over me, over herself, over her life. And now she was watching it all crumble in front of her. "Mom," she whispered, voice trembling, the word heavy with guilt and relief all at once. She reached for my hand with her free arm, the one I still had, gripping it like a lifeline. I held it firmly, the warmth of her fingers reminding me of why I had endured the bruises, the lies, the sleepless nights. Mark stepped forward, voice low and calm, but carrying the authority that Daniel had arrogantly assumed he possessed. "Everything has been documented. Every instance of control, every threat, every act of violence, photographs, messages, witness statements. It's all here." Daniel stammered, flailing for excuses. "This is a mistake. You don't understand. She's exaggerating. We're a family." Mark shook his head slowly. "This isn't about family. This is about safety. You crossed the line. You've hurt people who trusted you. And now it ends." I could see the disbelief, the panic, the first flickers of fear behind Daniel's eyes, the same arrogance that had sat across from me at the dinner table, smug and untouchable, now evaporating like mist. The officers moved forward, gently but firmly placing hands on him. Daniel struggled for a moment, yelling and protesting, but his protests were empty noise. The evidence was overwhelming. Months of manipulation and control, hidden bruises, and the meticulous documentation we had gathered. His lesson had turned into his downfall. Anna buried her face against my shoulder, her body shaking. I didn't see it. I didn't know how bad it was," she whispered, tears soaking my blouse. I stroked her hair with my free hand, comforting her, whispering, "It's not your fault. You were trapped, sweetheart. You didn't know. But now it's over." Daniel's voice rose, faltering. "You can't do this. I have rights." Mark's calm interrupted him. "Rights don't include hurting the people who love you. Rights don't include terrorizing your own family. You made your choices, Daniel. Now you face the consequences." I watched as the officers guided him out the door. The soft click of the door shutting behind him sounding almost like a final exhale, a release. The oppressive tension that had weighed on the room lifted slightly, though the echoes of the months of fear and betrayal lingered. I turned back to my daughter, pulling her close. "Love," I whispered. Is never supposed to hurt like that. Love doesn't make you small or afraid. And you never have to let anyone control your life. She nodded, tears spilling freely, the weight of guilt and relief mingling in her sobs. I see it now. I see everything. Mark stayed a few steps back, eyes scanning the room, ensuring the moment was complete. The house is yours again, he said softly. You decide how it goes from here. No one else. And in that quiet moment, with the table cleared, the dinner dishes still steaming slightly, I felt the surge of something I hadn't felt in months: peace. Not from vengeance itself, but from restoration. The illusion of control Daniel had cultivated, the false power he wielded over my family, was gone. I finally allowed myself to sit fully upright, to stretch my injured arm slightly, and to breathe. My daughter leaned against me, exhausted but safe. And for the first time in a long while, I felt in my bones that we were free. Daniel's tantrums faded down the hallway, replaced by the reassuring hum of life continuing uninterrupted. And in that moment I smiled, not cruelly but with quiet satisfaction, because I hadn't needed to yell. I hadn't needed to fight. I had only needed to wait. And remind everyone in the house, especially him, who was really in charge.